Hello, Uriel from Ninja Bear Studio here. Welcome back. In this video, we'll talk about reacting to player damage, which is a good follow-up now that we have weapons and attack abilities configured. We will take a look at the animations that we need to configure for both default attacks and strong attacks, the hit reaction ability, the configuration of the enemy, and then testing everything together. In the engine, let's start looking into the animations first. This is the default hit reaction animation. This is going to be used whenever the enemy receives a regular melee hit from any direction. This animation montage is composed by many animation sequences, each one related to an incoming attack direction. Each one of these sections have an appropriate section name equivalent to the direction, and they are all disconnected, meaning that they won't be played in sequence. Next, let me show you the animation montage for hit reactions meant for strong attacks. This is a simpler animation made with just one animation sequence, but if you have direction animations, you can use them here as well. And now we're ready to start looking into the gameplay ability. The hit reaction ability is created from the combat ability hit reaction base class, and it's automatically activated by the combat manager on each received hit. You can configure multiple animations for different damage contexts and also animation sections for each incoming hit direction. In this ability, I have one additional context for knockbacks and another one for staggers, both of them using the same animation montage for strong attacks. Next, we have the hit location weight and the attacker location weight. These are used in the hit direction calculation to determine what is the best origin point. Let's go back to the documentation site so I can explain this a little bit better. In this image, I have a representation of the attacker, the enemy, and the hit. The attacker is right in front of the enemy at a 0 degrees angle. The hit was received at the enemy's side at a 90 degrees angle. So in scenario number 1, if I have an attacker location weight of 1 and a hit location weight of 0, my hit angle will be 0 degrees, which is the attacker's. In scenario number 2, I have the opposite. The attacker location weight is 0 and the hit location weight is 1. That will give me a hit angle of 90 degrees. And in scenario 3, I have an attacker location weight of 1, a hit location weight of 1, meaning that they will be equally blended together, resulting in a hit angle of 45 degrees. Go back to my ability, you can see that I have a hit location weight of 0 and an attacker location of 1, prioritizing the attacker and disregarding the hit location. You can adjust these properties depending on the combat field that you are trying to achieve. And now that we covered that, we can talk about the configuration of the directions. The animation provider set to this ability supports multiple ranges that are matched against the incoming hit direction and mapped to appropriate animation montage sections. You will have an initial list of directions, but you can adjust the angle ranges or add and remove them as you need. Of course, you can also change the animation section names. And then after this list, you can finally set the animation montage that will be used for basic hit reactions, along with the default montage section name that will be used if there's no entry matching the incoming damage angle. This finishes the ability overview, so we're ready to configure the ability data asset that will grant this ability to the enemy. This data asset was already covered in a previous video, as we were talking about the configuration of the ability system component for the player. So right now, it should suffice to say that I will add the combat ability set, which will be initialized using an attribute data table, and then I will add the hit reaction ability to the list of default gameplay abilities. Now let's move on to the damage data asset. This asset is created from the combat damage data asset, and it's mainly used to configure instances of damage handlers. Damage handlers are cosmetic classes that will be triggered for each hit and will be played using the gameplay queue system. Make sure to check the documentation site to know more about this data asset, and we will also come back to it in the next video when we'll talk about the death ability. For now, I will simply add a damage handler for combat interfaces. This will trigger the handle hit function from the melee and projectile interfaces. And now we'll take a look at the enemy blueprint. The enemy blueprint extends from BPBot. That may be useful in the future for common functionalities, but its main parent class is Ninja Gas Character. This class has its own ability system component, and it already sets its gameplay effect replication mode to minimal, which is ideal for AI characters. This is where the enemy's ability data is set. My base class also has a combat manager component, which is where I need to set the damage data asset. Now I am ready to test the setup. I already added an instance of the blueprints to my map, so all I have to do is press play and see if things are working as expected. I will attack from the front and I see a hit reaction, and I'll attack from the back and I see the appropriate hit reaction as well. Looks good. I invite you to check the documentation for more information about the hit reaction ability and the damage system in general. Next, we will implement the death ability for the enemy. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.